So let me just paint a little bit of a picture of what Queensland could look like in 2050. And I will admit I've only done this modeling for Queensland, but I have done it on a whole of economy basis. So it includes not just the electricity sector, but actually all the different forms of energy that we use in Queensland today and potentially into the future. So a net zero Queensland in 2050 is a lot more electrified than today. It's probably about 4 times more electrified. Today, only about 15% of our final energy use is electricity, and in the future, it'll get up to something like 60 or 65%. Why is that? Well, it turns out that electric motors are a whole lot more efficient than combustion engines or other types of fossil fuel burning engines. And so there's a huge amount of efficiency to be gained by electrifying what can be electrified. And of course, the number one example of that is transport. In fact, the vast majority of transport applications are either already better off electrified, so battery electric vehicles, for example, or will be within the next few years. So that's a huge opportunity to electrify and reduce our carbon emissions that is actually value creative. If you're not better off buying a Tesla today, you'll be much better off buying a $35,000 electric vehicle in a couple of years. The next thing that works in our favor and that, I think explains why this isn't a story that's too good to be true, is that ultimately renewable energy is free. Yes, it takes capital to build wind farms, it takes capital to build solar farms, it takes capital to build the transmission to connect them, but once you've built them, they're free. There's no ongoing charge for your fuel. And so those two dynamics, the significantly improved efficiency of electric engines, electric motors relative to a combustion engine, and the fact that once you've put in the capital, renewable energy is free. And of course, we've seen these really significant 90% falls in the cost of those renewable technologies over the last 10 years. All of that together means it's possible to have a net zero Queensland. It's possible to do it without raising your household electricity bills. We've modeled that as well. It's possible to do that without breaking the bank. Now, I don't want to make it sound too easy. It's not that easy, right? There's a lot of planning, and I think one of the biggest aspects, one of the biggest success factors to get us to that future is to have a plan for how we're going to get there. How are we going to share the resources? Where's the capital going to come from? How are we going to build it at a pace that we can sustain? How are we going to look after people who might be in one sector and need to move to another, need to be reskilled and retrained? There's all of those considerations. There's also those value-creating measures, so the electrification of transport in particular, and then the decarbonization of our electricity supply, those get us about 75% of the way. And so there's still 25% that's really hard. It's not value creating today, and we don't have line of sight to how it's going to be value creating, cost positive effectively by 2050. And that's exactly what you'd expect. It's the stuff like cement. It's the stuff like green steel, green zinc, green aluminium, these really heavy industrial processes that use really high heat and that are really difficult to electrify. Some of them have been done kind of on an experimental level, but not at the kind of industrial level that we have here in Queensland. And so you've still got that 25% at the end, and it's worth thinking about, but it won't stop us from starting on the first 75%. We can get 25% of the way with transport, 50% of the way with cleaning up our electricity, lowering the emissions of our electricity. And then we've kind of got a couple decades to worry about that last 25%, as well as things like land use, reforestation, ways of absorbing carbon such that we can still emit a little bit and have net zero, true net zero carbon emissions in 2050. So I think that's really the opportunity. It is the biggest thing we can do, and it's also much easier than we think. It's easier than it used to be. It's actually value creative. It won't break the bank, and it won't raise your electricity bills.